social contacts with loved ones at home and by email and phone with other family and friends. Need help and support? Please contact us at the hotline 311 Psychosocial Support at 722-6575 or 518-4157. Brought to you by PAHO, the OACS Commission, and UNICEF.
I'm not hearing that. Good evening, Saint Lucia. Thank you so much for joining me after so long. It's been about a year since I started my program, originally called Uncut with Lisa Jawa here. We dissected issues, we talked to a lot of influencers, activists, persons who are responsible for making the majority of the decisions in our country, Saint Lucia. But now we've decided to rebrand, and although we have been waiting for a very long time to start the show again, we're finally here. So I'm thanking you so much for joining us, and we have a very special guest that I really want to talk with tonight. So as most of you know, over a year ago I entered into the political ring. I decided I wanted to throw my hat in on the Saint Lucia Labour Party ticket to represent the people of Castries South East. One word: intense. It was extremely intense, but nonetheless I did enjoy it. I got to meet a lot of persons and got a better understanding of, the plight of the people in Castries South East. They've had a representative for almost 15 years. And they're not satisfied at all, really, with their representation. So I thought, you know what, let me play my part and see how best I can assist those persons. I went through the process as every candidate would need to go through under the Saint Lucia Labour Party. It's a very detailed process, one that I respect, and I really appreciate the experience throughout this journey. Unfortunately, I was not the selected candidate, but Senator Joachim Henry received the endorsement from the Saint Lucia Labour Party as the candidate to take Castries South East into the next general election. So tonight, I have a few questions for Mr. Henry, and I'm sure those of you who are listening on Facebook have some questions for him as well. Mr. Joachim Henry is our guest. Senator, good night.
Thank you. Good. Hi, good night, Lisa.
How are you today?
Tired, but okay. Apart from that, let me congratulate you on your show, and thank you for inviting me to be part of the show.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for agreeing to be my first guest since we've rebranded. We're now Lisa Live, and I'm very happy to have you on board. Both of us went through this process together. As I said to our viewers earlier, it was very intense, but it gives you a better appreciation of, that this is something very serious. It's not something that you just come in and say, I just want to enter into elective politics just because I've had a dream. It's deeper than that. It's what the people on the ground want, and it's whether or not you have the capacity or the ability to be able to assist them, to assist the majority, because we both know that we're not able to help every single person, but if we put certain measures in place, direct certain resources, we hopefully can impact the majority in a positive way. So Senator, since we have you here and you recently received the endorsement from the Saint Lucia Labour Party, my first question to you is, how do you feel?
Thanks again, Lisa. I think this is a very important question. Following the last election, I defeated the last election. It was indeed a painful kind of experience for me. And persons who supported me. And immediately after, my response was that I would not give up. years. And of course, I decided to remain the candidate, and of course I was given the second chance to contest election on behalf of the Saint Lucia Labour Party.
But it must be a good feeling knowing that, you know, people want you to be their parliamentary rep.
It's a humble feeling. It's also when you take into consideration the trust that people put in you, and why people desire you to be the party rep to then, you know, it is that's humbling. And of course, it is a feeling that also rewarding on the inside. As I speak, I may sound a bit strange because there's an echo. So please bear with me as I do.
Sure, that's okay. So, Mr. Henry, let's just jump right into it. Where did you come from? Because I guess certain persons knew that you held a position at SSDF, but prior to that, many would say that they were not really aware of, you know, your interest in politics or who Joachim Henry was. So just tell us about your background and what got you into politics in the first place.
I grew up in Marshall, Lisa. And on the playing field in Marshall, you see persons, young men playing football. I played football. My recreation was the sport. And when you meet young people speaking about it, I was fortunate to be able to...
Just 1 second. I think I'm getting the echo on my end. So we're just going to take a quick break, see if we can fix this quickly, and then we'll get back to you.
We are the Helen of the West. Place. People work.
Hands play with a special rhythm.
But we are experiencing a public health crisis never seen before.
And it has left many of us isolated,
anxious and afraid.
And even though we are missing our families, our teammates, and our friends,
keeping our distance ensures our safety.
While protecting our loved ones.
And by extension, our Saint Lucia.
Let us embrace the silver lining for what it is.
A moment to reflect and chart a brighter tomorrow.
We are 758, 759, and everything in between.
And it is because of our resilience we shall persevere.
We are all Saint Lucians. We never give up.
The echo is still in the commercial.
Let's do this together. Apart.
If you haven't checked out Ramjay's Auto Parts yet, what are you waiting for? We stock a wide assortment of older and newer model popular car and SUV parts. Suzuki, Toyota, Mitsubishi, Honda, Nissan, Mini Cooper, and lots more. That's not all. Ramjay's also stocks truck and heavy equipment parts. And if that won't help you, we also do heavy equipment rental to keep your downtime at a minimal. Ramjay's Auto Parts is located Masad Industrial Zone, Grosley. Contact us 450-0495 or 716-1400 or email ramj35@hotmail.com.
In a world where germs are widespread, comes a group of superhero germ busters, the germaphobes.
We spend most of our time fighting germs, every day of the week. After I play, I wash my hands. Before I eat, I wash my hands. After I play with my puppy, I wash my hands. I cover my sneezes with my forearm or elbow when I am in public. And I cover my cough to avoid spreading dangerous germs. We are the germaphobes, germ-busting superheroes. You can be too. Always wash your hands and cover your sneeze and cough. Let's stop the spread of menacing germs.
We'll be back, germaphobes, with more powerful germs.
And we will be waiting to prevent you from spreading.
Why? Let me tell you why? Who need to fake on that? Look at him bypass. Look at him bypass.
This is UTV.
My face is fun. Let me say that way. Who need to say look at him bypass.
Welcome back. Thank you for staying tuned with us. Hopefully we have resolved this issue. And we were starting to have a conversation with Senator Joachim Henry. He did enter the political arena last general election to run against the current parliamentary rep for Castries South East. And he was not successful in winning. And obviously he has, you know, said that he wants to do this again. And this time he believes that he is stronger and better and has acquired some more experience to better manage his campaign. Senator Henry, can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
Okay, perfect. And the echo, everything is resolved on your end?
Not quite, but I'll manage.
All right. Okay, so we were talking just a while ago about what got you into politics, and right before we went to the break, I was just telling Saint Lucia that, you know, some persons are aware of you being at SSDF, but prior to that, nobody knew, well, not many persons knew who you were. I did not know who you were. And, you know, I met you a few times in church, but I did not know that you had political aspirations as well. So just tell us, give us a little background of, you know, where all of this passion and desire came from.
You're correct. My first sort of relationship with people stem out of my work with the Saint Lucia Poverty Reduction Fund, as well as being at the Ministry of Planning. I served there for approximately 25 years in total. And during that time, I personally felt the need to serve St. Lucians who are not as privileged as some of us, and also to promote and advocate on their behalf. So over the years, I continued to seek government finance at a time when they were preparing budget, and asked government to invest more in the social programs that cater for ordinary St. Lucians. I was never satisfied with the amount being allocated, and I thought that I could provide greater advocacy by seeking to have the political power associated with serving poor people. So prior to this, you would not have probably seen me around politics per se, but I did play the sports, and I was always interested in the well-being of young men, in particular, who are having difficulties in the community where I grew up.
What sports did you play growing up?
Football. I played cricket on the Marshall Field, but football was my passion. I enjoyed a football game, and when I went to school, I captained my football team representing my school, both at secondary school, St. Louis, as well as when I went to university, I played football. Currently, I still play the sport. I love it, and it's a good way to entertain myself.
Wow. I have a question for you on sports, but we'll get back to that very soon. So politics, like I said, and most persons are aware, I entered this. I'm 31 years old. Minister Mbali was in her 20s when she entered. But yet still, you know, people tell you, why are you going into that? That's not for you. That's nasty. That's for persons, you know, who have lived their lives, and for corrupt persons, you know, persons who just want to make empty promises because they want to fill their pockets. That must have been tough for your family. I know you grew up in the Seventh-day Adventist Church. You're still a Seventh-day Adventist, and just entering politics and knowing that, you know, this is something that the church has not been very strong towards supporting. How was that like for your family with you entering politics?
This is not just my immediate family, but my close friends who are not Seventh-day Adventists, who you know, try to discourage me into going into politics. Quite a few St. Lucians believe that I surprised them when I decided to go into politics, because they didn't see that coming. It was a surprise to them. Like you said, a lot of persons look at politics from the perspective of they speak of the corruption, they speak of the perception of corruption, and they look at other politicians over the years to measure the suitability or how they view politics. But I think that it's an honorable thing to want to serve your people. It's a challenge, it's a sacrifice. Your family, my family, if I had to put up with it, it's a major sacrifice for ourselves. And you make the best out of it in terms of serving the people. If your calling is to serve the people, you serve the people. And when time comes to an end where that is concerned, let the people judge in terms of how well you would have done. I personally believe that my interest in politics focus a lot on the vulnerable population, and loving my people, St. Lucians, I would like to make the best chance to serve them.
So, Mr. Henry, somebody will say, oh, you a senator, you drive around with your MP number plates, you're with the big boys now. How can you relate to even the poorest person in Castries South East?
Prior to being a senator, I would also suggest that being the executive director of the Saint Lucia Social Development Fund provided me with the opportunity to travel, which I gave up. The position, it was they paid well. The salary was equivalent to that of a minister. I gave it up because I wanted to provide, to advocate on behalf of poor persons. I was not making the policy decisions for poor people in St. Lucia. I was part of the executing agency of government approved programs. I believe if I have the political power, not only that I would cause there to be more resources, but also participate in the policies that addresses the issue of vulnerable populations. So I think this is totally different. I was offered the opportunity to serve in the Senate, and of course I welcome the experience. It's not so much of any big boy club. I do not see it this way. My life still is one that is humble, and I still do the things that I enjoy doing, like playing football and sitting down by Poolboy Don Cauldron, Robert Cauldron or Poolboy, as you know it, where we usually speak of the same things that we did for a long, long time ago.
Mr. Henry, do you think that an ordinary person can be given an opportunity to represent? Because, I mean, from my experience, I threw my hat into the ring. I'm a young woman, and we have a lot of younger persons younger than myself who are interested in representing. But, you know, time after time, you're being told that, you know, some people will tell you it's just not your time. It's not your time yet, that you need to wait and you need to acquire more experience. But I don't know one person who has entered elective politics and had experience. At some point you were inexperienced. So even with that, do you think that just an ordinary person can decide that they want to run a constituency, or do you think that there needs to be things that need to happen before that?
I think it should be a personal calling, and I think it's always a function of time. I do not think that there is any barrier in terms of age, except that you need to be mature and you need to know what you're about. The people decide at all times, and of course we have two political parties with their structure and organization. Of course, persons would show their desire or they would wish to represent, and of course I think we need to remain true to our ideals. I think that I will remain an advocate for the vulnerable population of St. Lucia, whether I'm elective politics or not. I think before I went into politics, when I was coming from school, before moving to the Saint Lucia Social Development Fund, my sisters and myself wanted to open a charity program for feeding people. That didn't happen because I went to seek employment, or I was invited to serve at the Saint Lucia Social Development Fund or the Poverty Reduction Fund, and be part of the NCF philanthropic activities of the National Community Foundation, working with the Boys Training Center, helping to establish or in promoting the establishment of the transit home at Casaba for single mothers and persons who are in transit. as well as contributing over the years to the Adult Daycare Center in Leclerc, a project that has taken care of senior people, the daycare center. Over the years, these initiatives and ordinary people, ordinary St. Lucians, who sometimes we forget that they have needs, certainly has opened my eyes and an appetite to do even more of that. So just imagine that we had senior persons before, but through consultation with communities, we've recognized the need to have an adult daycare center where persons can leave their senior parents and go to work and collect them at the end of the day. Caring, these programs that I've worked with certainly are powerful testimony to what we could do for ordinary people. The construction of early childhood centers, especially under the BNTF program, when we would spend pretty close to about $1.2 million to ensure that the children are provided with the best environment for learning. When you've done that over through a number of communities and you can identify them and you see children going through those early childhood centers, you want to build a lot more, because there are some children who do not have the privilege of accessing such quality facilities. So there is room for us to invest in our population, in the ordinary, the ordinary St. Lucian, to invest in them. And now in a post-COVID environment, it's even more important that the issue of poverty reduction becomes even more pronounced. And I think it's an ideal time for me to provide that advocacy and to promote the work that we've started in time past. Only to make a contribution
Mr. Henry, we're going to take another break, and when we come back, we're going to talk a bit more about Castries South East. Stay tuned.
Thank you.
Thank you for staying tuned. You're watching Lisa Live, and I am your host, Lisa Jawahir. Today, we are speaking with Senator Joachim Henry, who is now the endorsed candidate for Castries South East under the Saint Lucia Labour Party ticket. So, Mr. Henry, right before the break, we said we were going to talk about Castries South East. And my first question to you is, what makes you the best candidate? Why should the people of Castries South East vote for you?
The Castries South East constituency for the past 15 years, under the representation of the current parliamentary representative, has left a trail of dissatisfied persons, constituents, as well as basic infrastructure, the absence of basic infrastructure to poor households and to vulnerable population in Castries South East. The communities are almost demarcated in a way that as soon as you enter, you could see the state of the streets. You could see on the side of the streets the lack of access to persons' homes. There are some people still living without some basic, accommodation. Or what they're living in is not suitable. Whereas I know that we have had a housing assistance program for years at the Saint Lucia Social Development Fund. The focus in Castries South East has been nothing but infrastructure that is way outside of the reach of many persons who live in the constituency. The people have been left to just participate, some of them, those who can, in small contracts, but there have been no investment in people. I've never heard of, for example, a program associated with drug abuse, capacity building in life skills that can respond to the issue of violence, anger management, promotion of life skills, all of those social interventions that have been used in time past to improve the capacity of St. Lucians or young people. That is unheard of in Castries South East. And we have a number of communities, 22 communities over in Castries South East, where a lot of young people are now involved in deviant behaviors. Now you hear of crime in Castries South East in a way that we didn't have that before. So Castries South East has not been addressed from a number of angles. If you take the Bexar Highway, for example, by now you would have expected that on some parts of the Bexar Highway there would have been sidewalks or guardrails to protect, vehicles, people who living alongside, adjacent to such an economic highway. Only today I saw a few minutes ago where a vehicle, went through a building next on the side of the road in the Labby area, and the issue of vehicular accident being a risk to persons living adjacent to the highway, that has gone on without any form of, address, reprieve, or even discussion as to what can be done to make it safer. I think that signals poor representation. There's a community next to the Adventist Church in Labby that still do not have pipe-borne water. They use water from a spring, and you ask me, why should a community so close to the water mains? The water mains are just along by the bridge, but a lot of people behind living behind the Labby Church are without water. The issue of recreation, a lot of the young people in some of those communities, you have cul-de-sac, have been using a small ground, and they have played football on it, they've had competitions, but there have been no contribution towards making it even, better. It's not a half size of a football field, but those little areas of intervention that can impact lives of ordinary people, that has not been done. You still have a number of high, the unemployment rate in Castries South East is extremely high relative to some other communities based on our population of young people. So representation has been extremely poor in Castries South East. The emphasis has been on infrastructure, contracts, alone without investing in people, investing in communities, promoting livelihoods that can be sustainable through other means than just construction, because there isn't the capacity in construction to absorb everybody living in Castries South East. So a few equipment operators, a few of them are getting by, a few persons who can participate in civil engineering works, road construction, can get by. And with direct purchases contract, they have tried to integrate some parts of the population into that same kind of work. So you have women now receiving contracts to build a concrete road or part of a concrete road. That is the sort of thing that has happened in Castries South East over the past 15 years. And that is certainly not good representation at all.
Well, Mr. Henry, I mean, one would argue that the people still vote for the same parliamentary rep every single election. So is it that you think that they are not getting adequate representation? Or do you really think that this is the time where people are saying enough is enough because nothing is being done?
I think people believe, I think people this time around can see what has happened. They have the evidence of it. Persons can relate to what has happened. And in a COVID-19, post-COVID, the approach for governments in the small island states cannot be business as usual. So certainly it cannot be infrastructure. We have now to look at other forms of of developing livelihoods, because persons now are unemployed in an unprecedented way. The numbers have increased significantly. So we do have a challenge in our hands, and I certainly think that the posture of the current parliamentarian will not cut it for Castries South East or for any community that have poor population. It will be a challenge. We need to redirect the effort into areas of farming, looking at manufacturing, looking at the arts, the skills of individuals. This is not backward time. This is time when you invest in people. That is what I think will make a difference.
Mr. Henry, okay, I heard you and I understand, but I think a lot of persons, they wait for that contract closer to election time, and that is what they have. They wait for years. They've been unemployed, for a very long time, and they wait for that one contract, and that usually determines where they vote. How are you going to address that, and what are you going to do different?
I think, Lisa, we need to address this thing, because there's a lot more at risk than just receiving a contract for the construction of a part of a road, and you make $2,000 profit on a contract that's probably around $12,000, $15,000. Then after 2 months or a month, you're back to square one. I think people are aware, St. Lucians are aware of what a contract is like. A number of persons who have taken contract of $20,000 and then at the end of the process hardly have $3,000 profit, they now understand the implications of getting contracts of that amount. So persons are a lot more intelligent, persons have experience, and what people need is to sustain their livelihood so that they do not need to see Joachim Taylor, see Guy Taylor. It is to invest in people that their livelihood, they no longer have to depend on government doing things to engage them, but you could sustain their livelihoods through being productive and government creating the environment for this to happen. That is the only way we could contribute to the well-being of our populations.
All right, great. So we're going to take another break, and when we come back, we're going to address some of the current issues that we're facing on a national level. Please stay tuned.
Saint Lucia ka registre vers min corona ek i ka fait mouvement ek en chay vitesse tan chaque canef ka kouye pour vigilance publique là fait wolo parler en place publique qu'on bol en mai base ti boutique changer distance sociale 6 pieds Rodyon à l'autre, il ka travaille tan, si vous sentez qu'on pas cordial, quarantine ko, pas en contact et puis l'autre, en cas où t'es toi pe exposé. C'est un écuyer, free one ou ben n'importe clinique yo pou. Les pays a 10 000 à clé, ça veut dire les supermarkets, pharmacies et puis ATM, yo accessible avant cette souhait. Pays à clé en plein, ça veut dire tout bagay fermé à 24 heures. Servi protocole comme sorti par bureau indication santé. Nous tout ensemble, ça sauver vers mine corona. Si nous tous servi Jidla à toutes les.
Together let us win this war. Saint Lucia be a soldier. Together we can beat this corona.
Thank you for staying with us. You're watching Lisa Live, and my guest is Senator Joachim Henry. So, Senator, obviously we could not have had you in studio because we are on a partial lockdown and we are experiencing a curfew. So we have had to do our video call. We've had to communicate virtually. But I just wanted to get an understanding of how you think we, St. Lucia, has been responding to the COVID-19 crisis.
Certainly, it has been a difficult thing for most St. Lucians to make the adjustment in terms of the way that the manner in which we have managed ourselves. I think is commendable. The way the frontline workers have managed the issue of the various aspects and protocols, what have you, the way we have promoted it and the way we have responded generally, I think it's good. However, this thing continues. I do not believe that we are at the end of COVID-19. COVID-19 has actually ushered in a new way of living, and we have to make that adjustment. So I think it will still be a very interesting road for us as to how we make all of those adjustments. How do we get used to wearing a mask on our faces? And these areas would be challenged for us. So we've started well, but I think there's a lot more to come as it relates to COVID-19 and the way it will change our lives. But let me also add, Lisa, that when we think of the impact of COVID-19 as individuals, not many of us think of the impact it has had on our own assets as our homes. understanding that it has affected the property market. As a quantity surveyor, I'm primarily concerned about those other areas. Just imagine now a school is smaller relative to the number of persons a school is designed to house. Because even churches now, based on a 40 square feet per person, some of our so-called large churches have become smaller relative to the number of persons it can accommodate. That in itself has an effect on property values. So what is important and interesting, I think that the values of maybe agricultural estate has gone up, and maybe the values of hotel, the property market. So certainly we are in almost a totally new environment, or maybe things have reversed a bit in terms of how we place values on assets. What are valuable assets? What assets right now are almost, have gone down significantly in value. Thank God our homes can still accommodate the number of persons that it was designed, but it's not the same for schools, it's not the same for churches. So these issues in terms of how we have handled COVID-19, that continues to unfold, and it has significant impact on us as we move forward.
Absolutely, and it has also had a very significant impact on our education system. What are your thoughts on that, considering students have had to, respond virtually? A lot of persons had absolutely no training prior to this. I mean, this did take all of us off guard. But what are your thoughts in how we're managing our education system during this crisis?
I'm observing. My daughter's at home. One left UE. My older daughter is here, and is finishing up UE by the virtual accommodation that is made. My daughter at hers, although now I notice that she's waking up a lot later for school. So the children have had to make some adjustments, and I'm paying attention the entire family. So it's interesting. And I think as we continue to speak to our kids in terms of say, hey, you need to wake up and get to the computer. It's 8 o'clock, what you would have been doing. So there's a lot that is being done in terms of the home environment and readjusting into the school environment. I suspect the teachers also are having an interesting time in just trying to make the changes that is required. At the end of the day, we will continue to monitor. In fact, we need to monitor the outcome of what we've done, see how well our children are doing, see whether there's further adjustment. This thing is not something that we were prepared for. We have to accept it and make the adjustment. We need to monitor and see whether we're doing good at it and make the necessary adjustment for us to get the best out of the situation. But it is really a new environment that we have to live in.
Indeed. Now, I mean, a lot of persons had a lot of questions, raised a lot of eyebrows when the Prime Minister lifted the ban on the sale of alcohol. And persons spoke a lot about, needing a fix, as some would say, in terms of, this usually calms me down, so I need to have a drink from time to time. And a lot of persons were saying, okay, well, if you are going to discourage consumption of alcohol, why didn't we put measures in place to at least decriminalize marijuana, so persons would not have gotten, the satisfaction or the relief from consuming alcohol, but they would from consuming marijuana or from smoking. But I just want, as a Seventh-day Adventist in Castries South East, I want you to talk to us a little bit about your position on legalizing or decriminalizing marijuana.
I certainly have supported the decriminalization of marijuana, Lisa. I think it is something that should have been done a long, long time ago. I personally support controls. I support other forms of capacity building training. What I'm unhappy about is, in fact, and it is Martin Luther King Jr. who said that the moral arc of the universe bends towards justice. I think we need to promote justice in everything that we do. I would not promote any form of drug abuse or the use of any form of drug or what that could harm our bodies. But what I do not support is when we have laws that, is skewed towards a marginalized group of individuals. So you go into the prison and you see a lot of young men there because of smoking marijuana. I think of it in the context of there are other forms of abuse, but that is not treated in the same way. So I think in moving forward, we need to put measures in place, but I think we should stop taking a few young men and just sending them to prison because of marijuana. That is my hope, but I'm not condoning the use of any form of drugs, but I understand how it affects ordinary St. Lucians. That is not good enough for me.
Right. Now, there are certain things that we can do or certain measures we can put in place that can curb consumption or at least reduce the amount of consumption as it relates to abuse. And I just want to go straight into it. In a constituency that has so much land, I mean, it's the second largest constituency. You go all the way from Forestier, you up the Mon, all the way to the Badlil. This constituency has so much land, but yet still we have no state-of-the-art sporting facility. And we have about 5-7 fields in Castries South East, none of which are, conducive to run any sporting event. And recently, some time ago, there was an activity on the cul-de-sac playing field, and that was the only field that was, close to being okay to use. And still there were some interruptions as it relates to, improper drainage, inadequate lighting. It seems that there has not been a care for sports development in Castries South East. I mean, we've had a playing field that was dug up in Forestier, and the last activity I recall happening on that playing field was the Good Friday cricket tournament by the current parliamentary rep. And, it's more than a year, but still nothing has happened on that playing field. So in a constituency that is so large, do you see the need to have a state-of-the-art sporting facility that has been promised in the...
Well, I suspect the PAL rep maybe have plans for boxing, because as soon as I was announced as the candidate, somebody had a meme. In fact, my wife told me there was a meme of myself down with a, guy with his gloves, and he had just punched me down in a ring, and I saw a guy looking like a boxer in a ring, and Joachim Henry, a black eye, with his red gloves down. So I said that maybe boxing is what he has in mind for Castries South East, although I've seen no signs of this. But the culture of Castries South East is really football. Cul-de-sac, Badney, Twapito. There's a little ground, no more than about, 2,000 square feet in Twapito. And the young men play five-a-side, which is a standard small goals. And these small goals, futsal, is really a recognized sport. So if a community cannot afford a large playing field, you could develop their football skills using small grounds, doing with what is possible. I see no reason why in Castries South East we couldn't have all of the recreational facilities for the population. There are so many backhoes sitting all over the place, and there's land space, like you said. All it means is just, caring for the people. A little bit of caring would have seen a lot more out of, the parrot. As far as I'm concerned, there is an attitude, my family, I do not care. And the young people in Castries South East have just been left, to do things on their own. I can tell you, Lisa, there's a set of young people from Goodlands who play cricket down by the at the bottom of Goodlands, and they asked me to speak to the parliamentary representative if he can cause the trucks to be moved away from the place, shift it a bit so that they can play the cricket. I told them no, it was difficult. They begged me to, and then I went to the par rep and I asked him. He said to me in response, as a matter of fact, I need to bring in more trucks in that area. And so he did. And I was surprised that he didn't even consider the request. And I'm not lying. I spoke to Mr. Joseph in the parliament, and I told him that the young men had asked him to consider removing the flatbed truck so they could play. And that's the response he gave. So I do not think that he cares about stuff like this. Infrastructure, roads is what Mr. Joseph is about. That is, I can say this confidently. And if there are small projects that are going to make things better for the people in the community, you do not see this. The public facilities like the community centers, the Mothers Hall in Cul-de-sac, the community center in Odsa, the one in Bel Air, and just a few. There's not been a community. If you leave Forestry and you go all the way to the Mon, you wouldn't get a community center. If you need to have a meeting in that part of the constituency on the ridge, the last time I needed to have a meeting, I had to rent Sir Arthur Lewis Community College. There isn't a community center. It's all about civil engineering. That's all there is. The drains, the contracts, and this sort of thing. Nothing about community development, nothing about the lives of ordinary people in Castries South East. That's what it has been.
So, Mr. Henry, I completely agree with you. I mean, this is what you hear from the persons on the ground, that it's always about fixing a road. I mean, you have to be waiting for almost 15 years to fix a road. It is your duty as government to provide those basic public goods and services. So why are we using these as campaign promises? Why are we waiting closer to election when we know that the people really need the money? So they will take the money, you understand, because they need to feed their family, they need to feed their friends. But what is it that is going to be different this time around under the Saint Lucia Labour Party with you as a candidate on their behalf? What is going to be different?
I will promote. I recognize the need for having basic infrastructure in communities. Water, electricity, access under the Basic Need Trust Funds. These needs are basic. They are fundamental. People need to have a right to those things. People need to have a right to proper access to their homes. This cannot be a gift. They're not supposed to be items that we play politics with. What is different? I'm going to continue to advocate on behalf of persons who are struggling in Castries South East and in Saint Lucia by extension. I will continue to promote and to advocate that we have more resources to invest in vulnerable populations, the poor. I would like to see that we invest directly in ordinary Saint Lucians. They have their dreams and aspirations. They want to start a small farm. They need to get a tank for irrigation. Let's invest in them. They will produce food and help to improve our food security. Let's promote, a host of, when we say buy local, it is to invest in our local people. So I think this is what I'm going to advocate. This is what I believe in. I think it will make all of a difference in a post-COVID environment. Invest in our people. Lisa, I've seen times when we implement under the Labour Party, we implement in social programs, and I can hear St. Lucians lamenting just $1.something million for STEP in time past, how it was a waste of monies. Whereas we were employing over 2,000 persons, 2,500 persons. STEP was also employing a number of trucks, taking the debris to the dump. And when you think of a budget of $1.7 billion, why were they crying about $1.5 million for STEP? But then the same government in turn would invest $40 million for a golf course. And I said sports in St. Lucia, in Castries South East, is football. Some people play cricket, but nobody plays golf. In Castries South East, nobody plays golf. I haven't seen, once I saw a man with a golf shoes, and I was surprised that there's a special, footwear for golf. I do not know the sport, but I didn't grow up playing it. So when you find a government that promotes investing, even in a sport that is not even part of our cultural experience of the ordinary people, but you do not need $40 million or $10 million to transform. So back then, when we invested in ordinary people, there was a cry. This is a waste of monies. Now, post-COVID, we need to promote that we should have invested back then in our ordinary people, and right now we do not have a choice but to invest in St. Lucians. I want to be an advocate. I will sit in a cabinet and advocate and promote it, and also execute, help to develop programs with the people so that we could invest in them so that they can sustain themselves and their family. That is what I would like to do.
Agreed. So we're going to take our last question from the platform, and this came from Kimi St. Aj, and her question is, what do you think of the current political leader of the Saint Lucia Labour Party?
Oh, we have a fantastic leader. I believe in the Honorable Philip J. Pierre. He has contributed so much to my current experience and knowledge of what I'm going into. He is a very wise person. And also, I think we need to be in touch with persons who have had the experience as an economist, who is different in his style. His philosophy is different. He too, the only thing he said to me, Joachim, it looked like I will not have enough money to give you for people, and I would laugh. But then he believes in the investment of ordinary St. Lucians. He has demonstrated that based on how he has managed his constituency, how he has helped persons in his constituency. And during the time when I served at the St. Lucia Social Development Fund, I've had the opportunity for parliamentarians to call me on behalf of persons in their constituency. And I can tell you that he's always called. He's always asked me what is there. He's always represented sections of his constituency to me in terms of what we can do to help alleviate their plight. Persons in the boulevard, when there was the need for having this public facility that has been, discussed else in other political forum. I recall we went there, we had the meeting with the people. They said they needed that public facility in the boulevard, and the honorable leader asked us to consider it. The development bank came and provided the resources, and we did this. Some people do not understand why some communities are without those basic facilities, but that is a reality. And when a parliamentarian would stand with his people and provide those basic needs, it is only one who cares who would do such a thing.
Absolutely. Well, Mr. Henry, we're all out of time. I want to thank you so much for joining us. I know this was just the beginning of so many conversations. We touched on a few things just to get an idea of, your thoughts since you were recently endorsed. But I look forward to welcoming you back on our show very soon, and I wish you all the best with your candidacy. And ultimately, we know this is not about any one of us, but this is about the people. So thank you so much for joining me. And I hope
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Lisa. Again, I congratulate you on with such a wonderful show. I hope that Castries South East, as a candidate, the endorsed candidate, and the rest of the persons participating could only benefit from your show in terms of helping our campaign in moving it forward and bringing to our people the information that is needed for them to make this decision, which is ultimate, to remove Guy Joseph from office so that we could usher in a better and a day for all our people in Castries South East, a better day. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Senator. Have a good evening. And to you at home, thank you so much for tuning in with us. We invite you to join us again next Tuesday at 8:30 live on channel 124. That's UTV, also on Facebook. So thank you so much for joining us again tonight. Have a good one.